We are not here to get rid of all suffering. Suffering is, if you like, an ostensible evil, presents as such, and this universe is here to give us a mix of good and evil that we may learn and understand. If I take all suffering out of the world, you can now only learn by hearing and accepting such as you hear, and assuming it's right, of course, and by observing, again, clearly, correctly, and so forth. The whole point about this universe is, well, if there wasn't a mix of good and evil here, then you certainly can't learn by experiencing the outcome of good and the outcome of evil. You can't actually learn by observation either, come to think of it, because there's nothing to observe, only good. It's like if you only saw the colour green, you wouldn't know what other colours were. And similarly, even being told wouldn't have meaning, because you can only talk about positives, and you don't understand what positives are in meaning, except you've had some experience of negatives. You see, this universe of the transitory is transitory because of this uncertain mix all the time of good and evil. I say all the time, I may have, it's a mix of good and evil. And it is that, the relativity, all things are relative if you like, it is the relativity that is giving you value. This compared to that. If it's just all this and no that, how am I to value it? In relation to what? I value it in relation to, if you like, its opposite, which I need to know something about. And I mean know, having experienced, because I can only think about what I have in my arsenal of experience. I can use reasoning from that, so that, if you like, very little contrast I can imagine from that what a very big contrast would be, and choose the good. Or I can hear what you're saying and understand and receive something about goodness you're trying to get through to me. Or I can see it now. Or if I can't do any of these things, I can experience it more. And that's the hardest way of all, isn't it? Let me pause. Now you may most reasonably say, well, yes, but the individual in the world has some experience of harm, and from that experience, well, that's enough. And now, if he follows the following approaches, he can have no more experience of suffering. I think we have just smothered his ability to get very far as regards any further development of that which is good. For instance, I may avoid the particular suffering that's hitting me at the minute not follow through on how objectionable, how unacceptable something I'm doing that's causing this suffering. So the obvious thing, isn't it? I've got a pain. I could get rid of suffering simply by taking a painkiller. Oh, it doesn't hurt now. I carry on working the body to death instead of the pain causing me to stop and lay down. Now, you might say, well, don't do that because you should know that pain, you should rest anyway. But you don't have to suffer from the pain. You can use all sorts of techniques to avoid the pain. And that is true if I see the connection. If I don't see the connection, I simply suffer from the pain. I stop it. The damage is still being done because I haven't changed my way of life. I'm a living death, aren't I? I'm doomed. Do you see, in our response, we take pain as an evil and suffering as an evil. But it may be a necessary experience for us to avoid destruction and calamity. So yes, I experienced this amazing peace by avoiding all suffering, but I'm doomed because the pain is not there or the suffering's not there to drive me to an understanding that I need to achieve. And by, I think possibly I shouldn't say understanding, but values that I need to have. The snag with the Buddhist thing is, in the Buddhist religion, no God, therefore no heaven in this sort of, if you like, simplistic Christian view of heaven. And the now is in some sense all you have. Well, if that is true, then at least you may as well be blissfully happy in ignorance, perhaps, or not, but blissfully happy. You're not in ignorance of the teaching, the Dharma, but perhaps in ignorance of the fact that there is a heaven and there is a God, and you're missing an eternal goodness. That would be a terrible shame, wouldn't it? And I think would validate a bit of suffering. As minimal as possible. We don't want the kids to have a hard time, but we do need them to learn. We do need them to understand some things are, if you like, deadly to their future, and others bring life. And what we're saying in a spiritual term is we're saying some things are a living death, and some things bring life eternal. And we don't know, we just surmise the possibility of. Same as everyone else. What causes a person to surmise some possibilities compared to others seems to turn on their experience, and their experience seems to turn on certainly some experience of good and evil, a mix, not just all good. And indeed, the Buddha story itself, the actual story now, not the religion, but the Buddha story, holds very firmly to the fact that being in the palace where everything was nothing but good was in some sense not the way to enlightenment. The Buddha had to go out and experience, see for himself what reality was like outside of the palace. And of course the squalor of the city and that, well, hit him like an avalanche. He was not prepared for it, we care for our kids because we want them to survive into a wonderful future, but they won't have a wonderful future if they don't have some experience of difficulties, so that they know what difficulties and suffering is like. We certainly don't want to suffer such that they're annihilated by it, of course. That would be absolutely appallingly terrible. So, suffering has its place. We don't want to simply get rid of all suffering. We want to achieve a state where getting rid of all suffering, or not have suffering anymore, becomes valid. And it's not valid until we've had at least some experience of suffering. And of course we say, well, as little as possible, as necessary, but not less than necessary. In the Christian understanding for life eternal, in the Buddhist understanding, religion at least, if not their scripture, not less than is necessary to understand and value the Dharma, the teaching. I think I'll hold it at that. Thank you, Dad. Well, have a look at 1403, 1403. Because this recording was my response to listening to that, especially when I got to somewhere around 14 minutes of the way through. And also in the light of my friend Tenzin, who teaches on Buddhism, the Dharma, and in particular the understanding of suffering. Right. Thank you, Dad.